Us and Them, Pink Floyd. And for me, one of the standout tracks on the masterpiece that is Dark Side of the Moon. So we're going to take a look at it today, and we'll start by examining harmony. And there's a great documentary that's on YouTube about the making of Dark Side of the Moon that I highly recommend anyone who's a fan of the album check out. And there's a segment with keyboardist Richard Wright when he's talking about how he composed the chords of the song. And we're going to examine that. So we're basically in the key of D, and we start out on a D major chord. Okay. Now, what we're going to do throughout this chord sequence is we're going to continue to play an ostinato in the bass. An ostinato is just a repeating pattern that doesn't stop while other things on top of it change. So the bass line is just D and A like this. And then you'll have these chords, D, and now the second chord is B minor in first inversion over D. So you have the notes D, F sharp, B. That's a B minor chord, first inversion, over the D note. So, okay, now this third chord is a real interesting chord. It's spooky sounding. And Richard Wright said that he got the idea for the chord from listening to a Miles Davis album called Kind of Blue. Kind of Blue is Miles's probably most famous recording. It's one of the most famous recordings in all of jazz history. And I think he's referring to the song on the album called Blue in Green, which is a beautiful ballad, and it has this chord in it. This is called a D minor major 7. Very haunting sounding. So let's take a look at what that is. So a D minor chord is just the notes D, F, and A, correct? Okay. Now that in itself is unique because we started out in D major. So now we went to the parallel minor of it. Minor major 7 means exactly what it says. On top of the minor chord, the minor triad, you're going to put the major 7 of the root note, which is a C sharp from D. All right, so these are the chords we have so far. And then to a G chord. And then back to D. So that's the chord structure, okay? One of the things about that, though, what's unique is how David Gilmour overlaps his guitar lines on top of those pads in the keyboard chords. So let's take a look at his line. He's starting out with an open D string on the guitar. And then these notes, D, E, A. So it's like a D sus2, right? And that's all against just the straight D triad in the keyboards, right? And that adds such an open kind of sound to it, you know? All right, for the B minor chord, he takes the same voicing, right? And just moves it up a whole step. So instead of it being D, E, A, now he's got E, F sharp, B. So it's kind of like he's playing an E sus2 over D. Right? And I mean, the chord is technically B minor over D, but that E note in there, against a B minor, that's like the 11. So it's almost like he's implying a B minor 11 chord. Let's see. Right? Okay, for the D minor major 7 now, he moves up to an F. Still got the open D string going. F, A, C sharp. That's the upper structure of the D minor major 7. So then comes down to a G triad in second inversion starting on a D. Back to D. Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, it just sets up that mood, hauntingly beautiful. Okay, the only other section to the song is, I guess you could call the chorus. It's when they change from the D major section to its relative minor, to B minor. So we have D, B minor, A, G, with an add 9 to it, to a C. So that's interesting right there, because now we're out of the key of D. Now, in my performance section of the song, I tried to fill in the sound a little bit in this section with a little bit of strings. In no way, shape, or form could that ever match the outstanding background vocals that are on the original recording. I mean, the female vocals throughout that entire album really add a whole other layer to the music, but especially on the chorus of this song. It's really something that's just out of this world, and you can't really copy that. So anyway, and that's the song. There are no guitar solos in the song. It's a fairly short tune, but very rich in harmony with just those 4 chords, right? And so I think the takeaway here would be to experiment with shifting chords over a pedal point, because that's basically what they're doing. They're switching around the chords, over the stagnant bass pattern. And if you want to experiment with this kind of thing, it's pretty easy to do. You just pick a note and start moving the chords around. So if I do it in the key of C, right, here's a C on the bottom. If I start with a C chord, I can just start moving like major triads around to see what I get, like maybe in whole steps. I don't know. Let's see. C, D over C, cool sound. E over C. Now that actually makes it a C major 7 sharp 5. And I love the sound of that chord. It doesn't sound like anything by itself, but it can be really cool. Here we're going to get a little tough. F sharp over C. X. Okay, A flat over C. B flat over C. Back to C. So I did that in whole steps, and that's called a whole tone scale, where you go, and that sound is the sound in any TV show that, there's like a dream sequence and somebody said, I remember the time when that's what that sound is, that scale. So, but anyway, you don't have to do it academically like that. I mean, there's so many tunes that have such cool things like, that's from a jazz standard called On Green Dolphin Street, and that's the first section of the song where there's moving chords over a steady bass pattern like that. that's a real interesting way to expand your creativity in your songwriting, because a lot of times when we're thinking of harmony, we're thinking about moving chords around with the bass notes that fit the roots, right? But it's also an important thing to know how sounds affect the chords when the bass note doesn't change, right? I mean, that could be a really cool thing. So that's something to consider. Check that out. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's breakdown, and if you did, please consider subscribing to my channel for more videos like this to come. And thank you for watching.